Hey, Andrew.
Hey,
It's
good morning.
it's Jane Johnston with the Bar Hill Group at Remax Camosun. We're here on April 20th. I'm Jane Johnston and I'm like totally stressed. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, it's Andrew Plank here with LePage. And Jane, how's it going? You stressed? I'm sorry to hear it. This is and it's only, what is it, Thursday. This is why we do our shows, have been doing our shows Mondays, because the stress builds up over the week, right? Now we're doing it Thursdays, and it's like, oh my God, what's going on? I got so much to do.
Well, we have a good show for you today. We have a speaker, Russell Cass. He's going to be talking to us about Stratas. And the reason why is because he's become aware that maybe listing agents aren't reading the strata documents
before they're listing. Yeah, it's kind of like a listing agent not reading the title before listing a house. It's kind of a key piece of information.
Yes, so, and in pricing, it's a key piece of information. So you are going in and out, but it's possibly me. That's the reason. Okay, let's get to the data. Here we go from this week.
Yes, let's talk stats. Let's see what's happened in the last week before we get Russ in. So,
okay.
I'm not seeing anything there, Jane. There we are. Okay. So, okay, I'll take this then. 269 new listings in the last week versus 169 properties going pending. So difference of exactly 100. And yes, it's a pretty good ratio between new listings and pending. So that's good to see. Still seeing lots of price decreases, 78. So, a good third of maybe a quarter, that is, of the new listings are price decreasing. And what else are we seeing down this list? 27 properties expired.
Price increases. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. Do we need to talk about those? We do.
No.
Yeah, 27 expired though. So what we're seeing here is properties listing, and most of them are selling over time. A small number expire over time or are withdrawn, but overall, people are listing. They may not be making their price points, so they're doing some price adjustments. They're eventually getting there, and the property is selling. So people are doing business out there.
I think it shows longer days on market too.
Yes,
so the absorption rate.
Yes. And I'm hearing too and experiencing too. I mean, what would you say? Is this a slower year than normal, a slower year than obviously the last couple of years, or just a regular year?
It feels like it felt in 2019, actually. I remember doing a podcast interview with this lady, and she asked me how her house was doing. And when I was talking to her, I was like, it's a balanced market. It's fairly slow. And I'm feeling it's like that again. I think also we're in a different place in our careers than where we were 4 years ago. And so it feels faster to me than it does 4 years ago. But I think it's just because
you've built your business.
Yeah, more mature. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay, I'll do this one. So we have 286. This is Monday's market update, by the way, of month to date to the April 17th, 286 sales. That's unconditional with 824 last year. So, and I really felt like the market slowed down last year. So this seems very slow. With only halfway through, it looks like we're only going to get to about maybe 80%.
Mm-hmm.
New listings 539 compared to 1,368 in April 2022, and active listings are over 2,000 at 2,046 compared to 1,365.
Right, and based on that prior slide, we can see that those numbers are going up every month, or will continue to go up every month, because we have more listing than are selling and expiring every month.
Right. Okay, so let's bring Russell on.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Russell, how's it going?
Morning, everybody.
So yeah, Russell's been having some challenges with listing agents, I guess, not checking the documents.
Yeah, it's like what you guys are saying. I mean, it becomes a point of negotiation that everybody gets a real surprise about. And if the listing agent had the time or took the time to have a look, they'd probably get a little bit of a heads up to what's going to happen. And I understand it's difficult because it's not analyzing the report. It's just simply looking to see, does it project any special levies? And some of the reports are written in a way that doesn't make that really clear. You kind of got to go through their closing balances to see if they're closing in negative territory. And if they are, then there's going to be a special levy.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
So what would you, I mean, in terms like real estate agents list a property for sale and they're, you would expect there'd be some research into the property that you're actually putting up on market. And there's actually a lot of, rules for us around that as well to understand, the product that we're marketing. What would you say are the key things that someone should look for, and what kind of processes or tools or even supports like yourself would you suggest that agents could lean on?
Well, I mean, the report itself would be a starting point.
Depreciation report.
Yeah. And just having a look to see, and it's really the first 10 years, I think, that are critical, because that's when a new buyer is coming in. And if something comes up, it's very unexpected for them and they've got no asset growth. So they're going to have to dig into their pockets to fund that. They're not able to borrow against it, very unlikely. So it becomes a surprise for everybody. So that's one of the negotiation things that I've noticed in this changing market, that when the depreciation report, rightly or wrongly, projects $100,000 special levy in the first 10 years, everybody has a sit down and a deep think. But if it was made aware prior to, taken into account in the price, perhaps, it would be interesting.
I do find I actually start with a discussion with the seller to see if there are any special levies, and it depends on how savvy the seller is and whether or not they're paying attention to the strata. Some people literally don't pay attention.
Not at all. Yeah.
And then even just reporting on what's being done and how the decisions came to be, because different stratas work different ways. So that's why you read the strata.
There's a lot of different ways to interpret this information as well. And, it is important to price it right and to price it according to all the information, not just the bricks and mortar that you're seeing there as, the unit, but what is the condition, how well has this been maintained, and what's their contingencies and funds and so forth. But, it's kind of like you list a house and it needs a new roof. It's pretty evident that it needs a new roof. And then someone comes in and makes an offer and says, well, I want this much off because it needs a new roof, but you'd already priced it that way. And I think the same thing can happen with the strata docs. You can take into account a lot of this stuff and price it accordingly, but people will still then go into the strata docs, discover things, and want to negotiate further. So it's a fine line around, being aware of that information so you can advise your client.
Well, the other thing you can do, some people, if they're selling investment properties, they don't fill that information out. And they say they don't know anything, which is not to their advantage, which is exactly what we're talking about. Because when the information comes to a head, then we know that all of a sudden, okay, we have to deal with the special levy, or we have to replace the roof, or whatever the situation is. So what do you recommend, Russell? How do we mitigate this?
Well, I mean, knowledge is key. If there's any way to find out beforehand, and a lot of people honestly live in a house and the roof may need replacing, but they're not aware of it. I've spoken to people in a house going through, and they say the hot water tank was replaced not long ago, and I look at it and it's 13 years old. So there's those things. This happens to all of us. Some people are quite innocent about being unaware. But with the depreciation report, of course, it's a heck of a lot easier because it's actually written out there. And a lot of the reports, in fact, the bulk of them, will actually indicate the special levies and when they're coming. Now, having said all of that, often they're not correct. But that's not for the realtor to analyze and try and determine. The key here, and what I often bring up with clients, is that a depreciation report accepted that document. They've never said it's wrong. It may in fact be, but they've accepted it. And so this is the document we're working with. And it becomes, and I believe more and more it's going to become a negotiating instrument in a way.
Right. So what happens is when you submit your application to the bank, then you have an underwriter. An underwriter reads all the documents, and then things come to a head. They'll start to question things like, oh, by the way, what's happening with this vote or whatever, and it affects the buyer's financing, because if for instance, there was a building recently which had potential $100,000 special levy coming up, and it was for sale, I think, like less than 400 or around 400,000. Everyone kept looking at it. Then, if you read the documents, I kept saying to the buyer, you don't want to go into that building. You don't want to. And he's like, I need to go. I need to see it. I'm like, just read the document.
Does the street name start with E?
Yes.
Okay. My client bought that unit.
Oh my God.
Yep. But
it's okay
they knew what they were doing going in. We knew that property, once it's remediated and once the work is done, is worth more than the cost of, the value has been diminished so much because it's a cash only purchase and because nobody else has been buying it, that they got a great price for it. And in the meantime, they can rent it for because everything's rentable now. And who knows how long the vote will push down the road to actually do that work, but hopefully soon, because the costs do go up. But yeah, no, it was a business decision, and I think it was a good one because they analyzed all the potentials there. But it's not an easy one. It means the seller gets less money for it, and the buyer has to be a cash buyer.
Yes, exactly. So when these problems happen, unless you're a cash buyer, it's going to come up. You need to know. So the question is, now we know. We found out the listing agent may not be aware. How do we educate the listing realtor? Russell.
Well, that's an easy one. The board needs to begin to teach this, and get somebody in there to just explain it in simple terms. Honestly, a depreciation report, everybody makes it a complex document. It's really a simple document. All it's doing is looking at how much do we need over 30 years? How are we going to pay for it? And if they're not putting enough away on a monthly basis, then there's going to be a special levy.
And why are you saying looking at the first 10 years of the depreciation report?
Well, really, I mean, there's the whole thing there, but the first 10 years is when any buyer is really compromised if something comes up and he's not expecting it, because he's just made a big purchase. He's probably put a lot of capital into his deposit. He's mortgaged. And the bank is not very forgiving when, you come along, you've just paid and you've got an 80% mortgage, and now you've got 100,000 special levy and you need to borrow more money. It's
a lot easier to predict what's going to happen in the short term than the long term. What will be voted on, whether or not those things actually need to be done.
And then in the long term, we've got time. We can save that money. We can let our equity grow. There's lots of things. We've got maneuverability. And the short term, and I'm calling short term 10 years, because you start paying that mortgage and it's probably 5 or 6 years before you actually notice, oh, it went down.
So one of the things, Jane, and I don't know if it's been a long time since I've negotiated a holdback, but when you do come across something that may need it's enough work that's not making the place uninsurable or it can still be lent on, but perhaps it's a first-time buyer, very thin edge of the wedge in terms of their financing and being able to buy this, and they don't have the room for, let's say, the upcoming special levy that's proposed for 2 years from now at $10,000 a unit, or $5,000. Let's say $5,000 per unit. Maybe you negotiate a holdback, so that money goes into a trust account with the lawyer and is held pending that vote. So these are things we can do, but don't see it often. But you only know to do that if you've actually gone into those documents. And you, as a listing agent, because we're talking too about listing agents, maybe not being fully aware, this is something they can also talk to and coach their clients through. Say, maybe this is a way we can help affect a better chance of a sale.
Part of the issue is when we order the documents, we have to have a listing agreement. and then and then there's pressure to get the listing up quickly. And so you're kind of reading it all very quickly, and then you're looking at what's sold, and then like it all has to happen and it's often not the listing agent that's remiss in getting the documents on time. It's the strata company, the management company.
So that's the mechanics in the background. We often talk to people about selling their homes, and they're saying, well, we got to get this ready, we got to get that ready. Then finally they suddenly call you and say, okay, I'm ready to go and I want to be on market next week. And you get things signed up and you go into the rush mode to get everything done. But there is usually a week's time before you can get, for example, the Form B. And if it's self-run strata, they may be pretty slow. Some of the different strata property managers are slower depending on the system you're pulling from. You also have to manage your own time, and maybe you weren't expecting that listing to go live that week, so you've got other things already in your calendar. So there's a lot to sort of pull together to get that in advance of listing live, and not really making excuses, except really just talking about the mechanics of how this can fall off the rails.
Yeah, and in honesty, I'm not trying to put blame on anybody's door here. I just think that realtors would be better equipped if they know. Because at the moment, I'm seeing some realtors who are very aware, and the other side isn't, and there's a clear disadvantage occurring.
Yeah. So there's I use a tool called Eli Reports, and of course we use you, Russell, as well when I recommend buyers. But you do a review of depreciation reports. Eli Reports is an AI review of strata documents. It will also look for keywords and things like upcoming special assessments, and that's something that I will do for a new listing every time. And
really,
yeah.
And you were holding out on me.
Well,
I didn't know.
I can't give you all my secrets.
I have to say, I mean, AI is commendable, but what about real intelligence? RI.
I've seen a lot of RI out there, and I don't think it holds a candle to some of the AI I've seen.
I'm wondering if there's a one pager we can put together for buyer realtor. I just came up with this thought that maybe here's what's coming up in the next 10 years, and here's where we are, almost a summary, a one pager summary. Or can we get someone like you to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I could do. I know that you run courses for new realtors. I'm happy to come and talk to them and explain what they need to look at. I do this regularly for some of the real estate companies around town. And I always notice it's the young realtors that are there. The realtors been doing this for a long time, don't show up.
Well,
I guess they're busy.
Yeah. Well, maybe the secret is to go and get a course with the board to get this addressed so that everybody is protected.
Yeah, and I know they do a lot of education. A lot of it's around the legal side. But I analyze these reports, and I've done thousands of them. And what I find over and over is a lot of them are not compliant with the regulation. And some of them are pretty close, but they're not absolutely there. So the depreciation report is not an absolute carved in stone document. It's going to move around, and analyzing it, interpreting it, that's a whole different ballgame. It's just being aware of what is coming up in the next 10 years so you can react to it.
Yeah. I have an email that I send out to my clients, my buyer clients, that sort of talks about reviewing and understanding the strata docs, all the different components of it and so forth. And, we have to be careful as real estate agents because we're supposed to understand these strata docs, but we're not actually qualified or trained to really comment on the depreciation reports, for example. We have to stay in our lane. And that makes it really difficult because we often see things, but as Russell has pointed out time and time again, even these depreciation reports could be done in the wrong process, the wrong manner, and there could be some assumptions that were made when these depreciation reports were put together. So it's really, really difficult for us to jump into, making blanket statements like, this is what's going to happen. And so, that's why real estate agents do refer people like you, Russell, because we're trying to, bring in experts and mitigate our own risk, and also really help our clients be really educated and really understand what's going on. And, I've sat through so many building inspections, for example, that I could call myself a building inspector, but that would be a really quick way to get my licensing revoked, right? Because I know oftentimes what's going to be said on a lot of different things, but I'm going to miss the key pieces that you're going to see as a building inspector. That's, that I don't know. And same thing with the strata documentation.
The boiler system, the roof, all that stuff. The other thing is, how many buildings are you finding are not up to date on their depreciation reports right now?
I would say probably 30 to 40%. And some of them for very good reason is they've got a big project on the go. They want to finish that project before they commission the new report. Others, and I hear these comments, is they place no value in it. And they place no value because as they've gone down the road 5 or 6 years, they found that everything that was projected to occur just didn't happen.
Yep.
Right.
And so they lose faith.
Yeah. If they're not going to actually vote, if they're not going to actually use a depreciation report, because the depreciation report is a guide to, the future life of this building and what could be coming up. But if people continuously vote against, work that the depreciation report recommends, then what's the point of having it? It is a useful tool for buying and selling. It's a useful tool for knowing what your upkeep should be. But if you're not following it, then what's the point of paying for it? And legislation is what, every 2 years, right?
Every three.
Every 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it can be deferred.
It can be deferred. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say. Go ahead.
No stress. No, you go. Come on.
I was going to say that often they are not followed because when people look at a depreciation report, they look at it as set in stone, and then they're living in the environment where these items are happening, and like, oh, the windows aren't all failing, or the perimeter drains look fine, or they justify it just like everybody else in home ownership does, and then they don't follow it. It gets behind, or they, like you've done for me, they're replacing some things that are flexible. You would say flexible assets as they go along. They don't need it as a full big project in 15 years as planned. So often the reality is a lot different than the depreciation report.
Yeah, it's good to have that as a guide. Then you can make your decisions around it, and if you're kind of offside. But I mean, the worst thing would be to not have a report and to let things go too long and then not even be aware of it. So they serve a really good purpose. But the question is, do you need it every 3 years, or would every 5 years be sufficient? And
that's a good one. I'm convinced that it should. In fact, what I've said to the regulator is it should be every 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the deferral should be allowed to a maximum of 5 years. So 2 years of deferral.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say that is even a badly written report has had somebody looking at the building. It's required to be done physically, and they may just stumble on something that saves the strata a lot of money.
Right.
Go ahead, Jane.
So maybe we should do this from now on when we want to make a comment rather than all talking.
Okay, on the count of 3, everybody raise their hand.
Yeah.
Okay, we only have 5 minutes left, but I wanted to say, so I've noticed that some buildings now have gone to specialized reports for the building envelope condition assessment, a BECA report, or they're getting special reports on balconies and things like that, which really, to me, kind of take the place of a major part of the depreciation report. But or they're looking, to see. I don't know, they get an elevator specialist in. So what do you think of that? That's almost duplication.
Well, I'll tell you now that 90% of those specialist reports are being generated by the depreciation report. It's saying that they should be doing this. And I've seen a couple of buildings. One allocating $135,000 to do specialist reports.
Huh. Is that
And
21 Dallas Road by any chance?
no comment. No, there's a whole lot of them. And I will never knock a specialist report. If it's needed, do it. But I do see some of these where the conclusions are not really absolutely correct, in that the method of testing has been focused on areas of known moisture in terms of a Becca. So the end result is you have a higher percentage of moisture content discovered than if you actually did it equally through the building. I'm not saying anybody's cheating, but I guess that's what's happening.
I think though, yeah, I think too though, like there's a difference between like an engineer's report, like a building envelope assessment is really you know maybe getting an engineer in. Are we talking about that, like a balcony assessment?
Well, honestly, a building envelope condition assessment, it doesn't need an engineer to do it. You're going to cut a hole in the wall. You're going to test the moisture at the sheathing. It's a simple instrument, simple tool. There's no huge mathematics involved. Anybody with competence could do it. The next phase of it, well, the next phase is now you've got issues and they need to be rectified. Now we're in the world of an engineer. He's got to spec what's going to happen.
He's got to spec it out. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is.
Yeah, that's always like the difference between a depreciation report and an actual, one of the more in-depth reports where they're actually bringing people in and actually digging in and doing really like a forensic analysis on things, as opposed to, this building is this old. And I'm pretty sure, I know that depreciation report makers are on site, but they're really not getting in depth. They're really just taking notes of the inventory of the age of every system. And they're not really commenting too deeply on the true condition. They do, but not to the same degree.
Well, the regulation requires them to evaluate the asset. Mm-hmm. So if they're not going deeply, they're not following what the regulation is saying. Mm-hmm. And I find people who actually teach this are doing it incorrectly. So,
yeah. Okay, so I think this definitely requires further discussion at the board level. And perhaps a course. All those who are watching who think that Russell should be providing a course at the board, please write in. In the meantime, we're going to give.
Are you okay with that, Russ?
Oh, I'm very cool with it.
I don't want to volunteer
to me
something that.
To me, the more people that have the knowledge, the better we'll be able to make the industry.
Okay, great.
Okay, awesome. Okay, how do people get in touch with you?
My name's flashing right across the screen with my phone number and email address. And either one of you guys know how to get a hold of me 24 hours a day.
So if you want to reach Russ, reach out to us and we'll reach out to Russ. Russ, some people are just listening to this like a podcast. So I'm going to read out, to reach Russ, call 778-351-1928 or email him admin@homecheckcanada.com. That's homecheckcanada.com, all one word.
Oh, thanks, okay. Andrew.
Yeah.
Andrew, how do people get in touch with you?
Russ, do you want to read that out?
That's Andrew Plank, 250-360-6160. info@andrewplank.com.
6106.
Andrew at 250-360-6106. Sorry, Russ.
Oh, sorry, Andrew.
It's all good.
Andrew, you want to read mine?
Sure. That's Jane Johnston. You can reach Jane Johnston at 250-744-0775. Email brierhillgroup@gmail.com. You can find her online at brierhillgroup.com. She has also the Victoria Real Estate Show.com for various weekly shows and Victoria information. Instagram, realty teacher _remax.victoria, and also Vancouver Island _luxury_living.
Yeah, I'm going to take the second one out. Okay. All right, you guys. have a great day. Thank you so much for coming. I have a busy day ahead, and so I have to get started. I want to thank you for coming, Russell. I really appreciate you. And
Thanks for
don't
having
forget,
me.
everybody, you're welcome. If you are interested, please let us know what you think about the show. We'd love to hear from you. We would love you to like our podcast, subscribe to it on YouTube, and comment. And if you want, share it with somebody who you think might be interested. Don't forget, our show is on every Thursday at 9:30, and you can reach us here on Facebook, on YouTube, and you can go to Vancouver, the Victoria Real Estate Show, to check out what's happening. All right, check it out, you guys.
right.
We'll see you later. Have a great
Thanks,
day.
Russ.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Have a
Jane.
good day.
Everybody.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.
For coming in.